You know it's spring when all of the bugs start congregating on your window when you're filming at night because they feel like your windows are a giant street lamp. Disgusting. They should go back to hell where they belong. Hey guys, it's Sam and this is my March wrap-up. I thought I was going to end up having a bad reading month in March because the first book that I read, which I'm sure you guys already know about because I've talked about it a lot already, I didn't enjoy and I thought I was going to get in a reading slump, which I was for a few weeks, but I ended up pulling out of that reading slump in the last bit of the month and I read about 3 more books in 3 days. So I think I have 6 books to show you, but either way, let's get going. The first book that I picked up was The Bronze Horseman by Paula Simons. This is the first book in an epic historical romance. It takes place in Leningrad in World War II, and I hated it. A lot. I've done a full review and gripe on this, which I will link on the screen, but I hated the characters, I found them flat, I thought the main character had no agency, and I found the romance to be extremely toxic and borderline abusive, actually emotionally manipulative and abusive. And no, I did not enjoy it. I enjoyed the historical parts of it though. I enjoyed the historical elements. They were beautifully done and very gripping and very accurate, and I loved that, and I wish there had been more of that and less of the romance, but it is a love story, supposedly. So I have done a full review and gripe, which I will link on the screen, but I gave this one 1.5 out of 5 stars. The next book that I picked up was Addicted to You by Kristin and Richie, and this is the first book in a long new adult contemporary romance. And the first book follows Lily and Lo, who are 2 best friends in college, and both of them are struggling with their various addictions. Lily is addicted to sex and Lo is an alcoholic, and they have a fake relationship in order to hide their addictions from their friends and family. And I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about this one, but I ended up really enjoying it. I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, and I have a review which I will link on the screen as well. And I liked the characters. The couple that's the main focus in here wasn't my favorite couple, but there are other couples and other side characters that come in that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed this couple, but I didn't enjoy him as much as the other couples, and I'm really interested to see how this whole story progresses and how these other characters weave in and out of the story, and I'm focusing on them. I just found it really gripping. I enjoyed the new adult aspect of it because a lot of times I feel like new adult romances can get very angsty and very toxic, and I found that this relationship was discussed in a way that they were saying that this relationship is toxic, but they need to fix this, and this is not okay. And there was no like slut shaming and stuff like you get in a lot of new adult books. A lot of the new adult tropes that I don't enjoy weren't present in this, and I read this I think in 1 or 2 sittings. I enjoyed it so much and I cannot wait for the rest of the series. I then picked up Pilars by Mindy, which is the second book in the Avalon duology. But Avalon, which is the first book, follows a crew of teenagers who are a band of thieves that steal spaceships for a warlord and a crime lord in space. And it is amazing. I loved the first book. If you're a fan of Mass Effect, you're going to love these books. These books are a ton of fun, and there's a lot of similar elements between the Mass Effect video game franchise and this. Not the same story, but a lot of the different sciencey aspects of it I feel like are very similar to this. So I enjoy the second book, but I didn't enjoy it as much as the first one. The first one I gave 4 out of 5 stars. This one is more of a 3-star book. I actually think that there could have been more done if it was a trilogy. I think that a trilogy would have made it have a lot more room to grow, which I don't typically say. I prefer duologies, honestly. I think a lot of trilogies could be put into duologies. But this one, I think, needed a little more room to expand. So I wasn't as attached to the characters as I would have liked. I didn't really find myself wanting to read this when I put it down. I was fine reading it when I picked it up, and I enjoyed it. But when I put it down, I kind of forgot about it. I didn't really feel on the edge of my seat when the characters were in danger, and I just didn't feel that attachment to them like I would have liked to. So ultimately, a good book, a good read, a good introduction to science fiction, but just a 3-star for me. And the next book that I picked up was The Forbidden Wish by Quarry, and I enjoyed this book so immensely. This was our random read-alongs group book for this month, and I loved it. I wouldn't have picked this book up if it hadn't have been for the read-along, but I'm so glad that I did. This is Aladdin retelling in which the genie is actually a girl, but it is not the typical Aladdin story that you've heard before. It is not the like Arabian Nights, anything like that you've heard as far as Aladdin. It is its own unique story. There's a few key elements that are left in, but overall it's a retelling that is completely different. It is so much more focused on the female characters. The character of the genie is amazing. One of my favorite female characters of all time, and you know who's up there in the ranks for that, so that's really saying something. I adore her. She was written so well. There's also a couple side characters that I really enjoyed, and there is a gang of lady assassins in here which just speaks to my every being, honestly, and they're a bunch of badasses and I love them. So the female characters in this book are just powerhouses and I absolutely loved it, and the writing is beautiful and I loved the world. It's a unique fantasy world in that it's not the typical thing that you see. It's, you know, like a Middle Eastern kind of setting, which you don't see a ton of in fantasy, and I loved it. I didn't particularly love the romance in here. I don't have a big problem with it, and I'm honestly in the minority when it comes to not liking the romance. It just didn't read as very believable to me, and that is just my opinion. But overall, I love this book, and I gave it 4.5 out of 5 stars. Our live show has actually been rescheduled for tomorrow, which is Sunday at 4 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sarah Jane's channel. So if you have read this book, please join us for the live show. We're going to be talking all about it and all of the wonderfulness that is this book. I then picked up The Star-Touched Queen by Roshini Chokshi. So I actually won this book in a Twitter giveaway that was hosted by the author, and I am so excited that I did. This book comes out in May, and it speaks to me on so many levels. I actually included this in my most anticipated reads of the spring, and that is because this is a Hades and Persephone retelling that is told with Indian mythology mixed in. You guys know how I feel about Hades and Persephone, and this book did not disappoint. The writing in here is beautiful. It is so unique. It kind of feels like the writing that you would expect from like Neil Gaiman or the Fairyland series, like that very kind of whimsical, mysterious writing, and it fits so well in that this is like weaving its own fairy tale, because this is not necessarily Hades and Persephone. It's inspired by Hades and Persephone, but it's its own unique story and its unique characters, and the writing just makes the world feel so magical and so different, and like anything goes. You just have to expect with this book that things are just the way they are because they are, and I kind of love that about a lot of books. That's why I like Neil Gaiman and stuff like that, because like I said, this feels kind of like The Ocean at the End of the Lane or Stardust, and that there's things that you're told and that's just how it is, and the writing is beautiful, and it's Hades and Persephone, and you know how I feel about them, and it's just wonderful. So this particular story tells the story of a girl who is born with a horoscope that predicts marriage of death and destruction, and it just speaks to me. I love the characters. I love the protagonist. She is stubborn and she is impulsive, so I know she's a character that not everybody is going to enjoy, but I adored her. I enjoyed the love interest. I enjoyed the world, like I said, because it's so unique, and again, another fantasy world we don't really get to see, and it's beautiful, and I highly enjoyed it. So a review will be coming for this closer to its release date, but I gave this one 4 out of 5 stars. And the last book that I read this month, which will come as no surprise, and that is The Winter's Kiss by Bukowski. This is the third and final book in the Winter's trilogy, and I have done a review on both of the first 2 books, which I will link on the screen so you can check those out if you have not read the series. But this was amazing. I loved it. I read this book in one sitting because I am trash, and I could not put it down, and I was terrified of being spoiled, so as soon as I got it, I just read it, and I just stopped to eat, and that's it. And then I was exhausted and went to bed like right after I finished it, because these books are emotionally exhausting. Marie Bukowski is so amazing at writing emotion and angst in a way that is believable, and not in just there's angst just to have angst. And the characters are wonderful, and the world is a different kind of fantasy world in that it's a fantasy that doesn't really have magic, and the political intrigue and interweaving and the intelligence of the main characters, and this was everything to me. I loved it so much, and it was just the perfect conclusion for this story and for the themes of this story and the characters and what they went through this entire time and the character development. They're so different from what they were in the first couple of books, and I loved it so much. This book is not my favorite in the series. I do have problems with finales usually. I don't like when things end, and I always feel like they're going to end in a different way, and so that makes me a little disappointed sometimes. But overall, this book is amazing. This is still 5 out of 5 stars. Yes, I enjoyed the first 2 books a little bit more. They're a little bit higher, but they're all 5 stars. So you can't really say that one's necessarily better than the other, because they're all 5-star reads to me. I'm going to be having a review and a gush coming up on Monday for this book. So if you're interested in all of my in-depth thoughts and in-depth feelings and just me, a lot of me just like fangirling as my gushes are, then check that out on Monday. So that is it for all the books that I read in March. Comment down below and let me know your favorite book that you read this month. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you guys soon. Bye!